There's going to be a factory worker shortage in China, Vietnam, and India. Alarm bells should be ringing at Western companies that rely on inexpensive Asian labor to churn out affordable consumer goods. Asian countries are rapidly aging. In 2001, Nike reported 80% of its factory workers were in Asia, with a typical age of 22, single, and raised on a farm. Today, the average worker at Nike in China is 40 years old, and in Vietnam is 31 years old. There was a time when it was easy to attract labor in Asia. The globalized manufacturing model has delivered a vast array of inexpensively produced goods to consumers across the world. We have become accustomed to cheap goods like flat screens that are manufactured in factories in China and Vietnam. Looking at the Walmart website, I can purchase a 32-inch television for about $100 or a 55-inch television for $250. Previously, I did a video that addressed the question, why is it so expensive to repair consumer appliances? The answer is that it is not so much that it's expensive to repair appliances as much as it is extremely cheap to purchase a new appliance. When your fridge or dishwasher breaks, I would reckon that you ultimately decide to just replace the appliance with a new one rather than paying a repair person. The garment industry is seeing young workers routinely drop out of training programs. Those that stay will work in garment factories for only a couple years. Factories in Asia are being forced to increase wages and adopt costly worker retention strategies. Factories are improving the quality of their cafeterias and building childcare facilities. Some factories subsidize kindergarten or fund technical training programs. Other factories are relocating to rural areas where people are more willing to do manual labor. But then this puts the factories farther away from ports and suppliers, while also forcing them to accommodate rural life, including worker absences during harvest season. Increased labor costs are becoming the rule rather than the exception across companies that rely on manufacturing in Asia. In June, Nike reported higher product costs due to labor. Hasbro reported this year that labor shortages in Vietnam and China increased its cost to produce its toys and games. Mattel, the maker of Barbie, is also facing higher labor costs for manufacturing. Both Hasbro and Mattel passed on these higher manufacturing labor costs to consumers in the form of price increases for products. The trend of increased labor costs being passed on to consumers is a trend that will accelerate in the future because workers in Asia do not want to work in a factory like their parents. Beginning in the 1990s, Asian manufacturing hubs, most notably in China, began to integrate into the global economy. What were previously poor rural agricultural societies became the manufacturing center of the world. The price of everything from appliances to furniture drastically fell. Not only are young people disinterested in factory work, but they are having fewer children than their parents did and at later ages. These factors mean there is less pressure to earn a steady income in their 20s. The service sector offers less backbreaking work as, say, a store clerk in the mall or as a receptionist at a hotel. Urban youth unemployment in China was 21% in June, despite factory labor shortages. Many young people in manufacturing nations are well educated. They believe their lives should be not lived inside the confines of factory walls. One furniture manufacturing business owner who was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal makes furniture for retailers like Lowe's. The business is called Acacia Woodcraft in Vietnam. While the business is partially automated, human craftsmanship is still needed for many tasks. She moved her factory out of southern China 4 years ago, and she considered Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. She reconsidered this after hearing horror stories about worker turnover and soaring wages. She instead set up a factory in rural northern Vietnam. The typical worker here is in their 40s or 50s. Some can't read very well, so she has to explain things verbally and visually demonstrate tasks as well. However, what she gained in rural northern Vietnam was a stable workforce, something that would be hard to find today in southern China or even Ho Chi Minh City. Younger employees that can read well are treasured by her. The factory owner involves them in decision-making and like to meet visiting American buyers. Factory wages in Vietnam have more than doubled since 2011 to $320 a month, which is 3 times the rate of increase for factory wages in the United States during that same time period. Factory wages in China have risen 122% from 2012 to 2021. In the past, when local wages rose too much, manufacturers would typically relocate to a place with more affordable wages. While there are countries in Africa and South Asia with large labor pools, these locations lack political stability, good infrastructure, or trained workforces. Clothing brands that expanded into Myanmar, Burma, and Ethiopia were disrupted by unrest and civil war. While Bangladesh has been a reliable country to produce clothing in, the country has restrictive trade policies and clogged ports. While India does have a huge population, issues with retaining young workers that plague China are becoming endemic in India as well. Young people in India prefer either a rural farm life supported by state welfare programs or gig work versus living in factory dormitories and industrial hubs in the cities. India is known for its IT staff, and the IT industry is another thing drawing workers away from factories. One Nike supplier has struggled so much to attract young workers that it ended a training program for high school graduates because so few of them were accepting the job after the training program. Now, 90% of this Nike supplier's workforce is 30 years or older. One CEO said that once young Asian people see American reality television, they don't have a desire to work in factories. They would prefer to work in like a shop. She is planning to move production to North Carolina and automate it. Perhaps this is the trend we will see. A factory worker shortage in Asia, resulting in companies moving factories to the United States and automating production. Aging populations in Asian countries also mean more young people are taking care of their elders instead of working in manufacturing. So the conclusion I get, and what I think is going to happen, is you're going to have more labor shortages in China, Vietnam, India, across Southeast Asia. And there just really are not very many alternatives. You have Taiwan, you have China, you have Vietnam, you have India. There's not a whole lot of other places you can go. I mean, maybe Thailand, maybe Philippines. But again, you're dealing with lack of infrastructure. So the wages for these factory workers are going to continue to climb, and it's just there's not a lot of appeal for factory work for a lot of young Asian workers.